now.
Hello. Our presentation today is on Odd Girls Out by Rachel Simmons. The presentation is by
Katie Ruda,
Bailey Morgan.
Alex Wilson,
and Elena Kovitz. The author of Odd Girl Out is Rachel Simmons. Her interests in the hidden aggression in girls began when she was bullied by her popular friend in the 3rd grade. The bullying that took place was not physical. Instead, it was her friends bullying her by whispering, spreading rumors, and convincing her friends to run away from her. The sorrows that Simmons experienced was overwhelming, and she held it with her for years. Her research truly started when she was attending grad school in England. She had a desire to fill the blanks from her past and see if others felt the same way that she did. After digging through books and computer searches, she realized there's a lot of research on boys' aggression and bullying, but there's hardly anything on girls. She decided to send an email to everyone she knew in the States and asked that they forward it to their friends as well. In the email, she asked questions about if they had been tormented by a girl and how it affected them today. Her inbox was quickly overwhelmed with women's emotional stories, and she began inspired to end the silence of the hidden aggression in girls. She began to travel around US schools in order to interview young girls about their experience with girls being aggressive towards them.
So the first chapters are the hidden culture of aggression in girls and intimate enemies. The 2 chapters mainly talk about why we need to pay attention to the girls' aggression, girls' bullying. Girls' aggression is hard to be recognized because girls express their aggression and anger in a subtle, covert, indirect way, such as nonverbal gestures, silent treatment, and isolation. In Janet's story in chapter 1, Brianna and Mackenzie gave her a code name called her Harry Whore. They started a club and got every girl to join it in to isolate Jenny, intentionally walk by Jenny in the hallways and insult her. This kind of aggression is not easy to identify as boys using their fists, but it causes lots of damage and even may ruin one's life. Many girls who have been bullied will lose their trust in girls forever and never get out the experiences. Simmons named the girls' aggression as alternative aggression, which is different from aggression among boys. But many people don't see alternative aggression as aggression. Some people think girls are born sneaky, untrustworthy. Some people even think that girl bullying means they are mature. It is a rite of passage, a stage every girl will outgrow. The theory is not acceptable because it stops us thinking about how the culture shapes girls' behavior and it stunts the development of anti-bullying strategies. Simmons said, we need to freeze those fleeting moments and name them so that girls are no longer besieged by doubt about what's happening, so that they are no longer believe it's their fault when it does.
Next, Simmons looked at how girls show aggression with friends, and she learned that girls are often afraid to show their aggression to their friends because it may cause more arguments and show that they are crazy. And then she looked at how technology makes it easier for girls to be more aggressive because of them being able to show how they feel and avoiding that conflict in real life. They learned that when she was doing her research with the young girls in schools, they decided that it was easier to show aggression at home when they were online or texting because they didn't have that face-to-face contact. And she learned that a way that girls often did show aggression, if they did it, would be through note passing or even texting, like I mentioned. They didn't like note passing because it was easier to discuss issues with friends, like I said, because it was that they weren't face to face with their friends. And then their friends often would find more arguments if they did become aggressive or just even tell their friends, hey, what you did was mean. So they just found it easier to just overall not be aggressive at all toward their friends.
The chapter She's All That focuses on jealousy and popularity. It found that girls avoid being friends with girls who think that they are all that. The students say that the issue with being old out is the fact that old out girls brag about it, and students prefer to be friends with girls who act like everybody else and are quiet. In this chapter, we hear the story of Stephanie, a girl who just transferred schools and became friends with Marissa and Lori. Stephanie was pretty and caught the attention of boys easily. Her friends started to ignore her and prank her to humiliate her. One of her pranks was sending flowers and pretending a boy had sent them to her. Stephanie's self-confidence withered and she grew depressed. The level of aggression she was shown caused her to transfer schools. Stephanie said that she didn't mean to be an old that girl or attract the attention of boys. Years later, Stephanie is still haunted by the aggression she was shown by Marissa and Lori simply because they thought that she was old that. The label of being old that turns girls away. Overall, students state that they don't want to be friends with old that girls and they don't want old that girls to be confident because they are threatened by what they are. Jealousy and competition play a huge role in this belief because girls play out their anxieties on each other. And then the chapter, The Bully in the Mirror, focuses a lot on popularity as well. This chapter focuses more on how bullies feel about themselves. One of the stories in this chapter is about a girl named Megan. She got into an exclusive clique for the first time in 5th grade and she loved being popular, but she said it was a lot of work. She quoted that she was always worried that her popular friends would do something without her. She tried to attract attention from the leader of the group by humiliating a follower named Lyanne. She tricked her by asking her about fake bands in order to make others realize that she was nothing but a follower. Megan quotes that being mean to Lyanne was easy but hard at the same time. She realized this was exactly what happened to her at her old school when she was bullied and grew to view herself as a horrible person. When she looked into the mirror, she saw an ugly person on the inside and outside. One of the quotes from the book is, "I would look into the mirror and, oh, I'm just an ugly person inside and outside. I'm disgusting." Simmons tells a lot of stories similar to Megan's, but overall the message of this chapter is bullies are malicious and lose friendships and trust over those who they care about. Once the bullies realize they lost their friendships, they usually feel their apologies wouldn't be much good. Jealousy is a powerful thing, and it's important to reflect and talk about emotions rather than locking them away and allowing them to control our actions.
Chapter 7 is about popularity and what it's like inside and outside the circle of popularity. We see the story from many girls, but two girls that we focus on is Alexis, who was very popular. And she talks about how it was hard to keep up with the other girls, just like in every aspect of it. Like just any second, it would be like, you're out. And a quote from her is, "You don't trust anyone. You're totally insecure to everyone. You look fine, but it's very fake." Popular girls are the ones that grow up the quickest. So in the book, it says popular girls are the ones who discover boys first and makeup first and all those kinds of things. And another quote was, "They have access to the booty of womanhood," which I thought was funny. And then another girl in this chapter is named Janet, and she is not popular. She talks about how she wasn't popular, but her best friend wanted to be. So she was subject to the I have an abuse, the abuse of her friend, and she compares the relationship with her friend to her sexual abuse as a child. The author also continues to describe relationships girls make as abusive and training ground in which vulnerability and disempowerment are learned in the ability to identify abuse as lost. This chapter 8, Resistance, is about women of color or minorities in general. It talks about how alternative aggression is primarily a white middle-class girl problem, and how girls who are working class or of color don't have the option really to be passive and nice and put relationships before others, before their own feelings, because often, especially with like, it talks about with Black girls, how they can't be nice like these white girls are because they could be putting themselves in actual harm's way doing so. And so a lot of their parents teach them to be outspoken and stand up for themselves. And it talks about how they interact with this alternative aggression and how they get a lot of pushback from it, and it confuses them. And then it also talks about how Latinx people are socially, their culture, the way they raise boys and girls is a lot more similar to the way we do it in most of America, where, you teach the girls to be passive and submissive and that kind of stuff, and the boys are loud and aggressive and getting what they want, but it's a lot more extreme. And so they face a dual world kind of, where it comes from very, very traditional gender roles, and then the less strict gender roles of the outside world, and how they have to go between like their family, who often doesn't always speak English, and they have these very traditional roles, and then going to school and having these not so traditional roles.
Okay, this chapter, chapter 10, was called Helping Her Through Drama, Bullying, and Everything in Between. This chapter is geared toward helping parents have conversations with their girls about bullying and aggression. She encourages parents to look harder at what seems intuitive to us, and reminds parents that empathy should be a number one response. She argues that parents often are so focused on trying to fix a problem that they aren't acting in a way that shows they are really listening and understand. The author also discussed in this chapter that many girls don't talk about their bullying experience because that kind of behavior has been so normalized. They often don't see what the other girls are doing as wrong or punishable. Because the subject is so sensitive for both girls being bullied and those bullied, the author closes this chapter by discussing that there are good ways to say things and bad ways to say things, and provides guidance onto what those fault lines are. For example, instead of trying to make your daughter feel better by saying something like, everyone goes through this, you could say, I'm sorry that you're going through this, which was much more validating. Chapter 11 was called Raising Girls in a Digital Age. This chapter was particularly focused on helping parents navigate how to raise their young girls with online boundaries in a time where technology is so easy to access. The author discusses that access to the internet or social media is a privilege and not a right. No young girl is entitled to having a phone at a certain age or access to the internet, although many young girls may think that. The author encourages parents to think twice before giving their kids private access and to be involved in this area by asking questions. She says that when parents begin to normalize asking their daughters questions about life online, their daughters are less likely to hide things from them because it is already an open conversation. These questions may include, what are your favorite things to do online with your phone? Would your friendships be better or worse without technology? Do you think people act online the same way they act in real life?
The overarching theme of this book is fear of isolation. All of the way girls maneuver and manipulate relationships has to do with taking and giving relationships. And really, it's pivoting around not having friends. And a quote from the book is, people who are alone are pitied and no one wants to be pitied. Girls fear this because they are taught to be perfect, and perfect girls have lots of friends, or just friends in general. And then also, I had to show 4 examples of how fear of isolation can manifest in some ways. And so the first one was participating in the bullying. This was talked about previously in our presentation about Megan, who participated in bullying a girl with her friend Jackie by making up songs and pretending they were a real band. She talks about how it makes her feel and how she doesn't like it, but she does like it at the same time, and how Jackie is her whole world, and so she doesn't really care otherwise. The next one is tolerating an abusive friendship. This one is another quote from when she was talking to a bunch of middle schoolers. If a female lion is alone, she dies. She has to be a part of the group. And so it just really shows how much they view the importance of being in a group and having friends. Like, it's a life or death situation to them. It feels like it, it's not really. And then the next one is becoming the bully. And this one, the example I used was from a girl named Lisa, whose mother begged her not to be one of the girls who bullied. And she's like, but I couldn't do that, she said simply. She didn't want to be the dork. And so she felt her only way of not being bullied was to become the bully. And then the last one is denying their authentic selves. This one is another quote from the book, sort of. The Crisis Brown and Gilligan report is fundamentally relational. Pressure to deny the authenticity of themselves robs girls of the ability to communicate sincerely with one another. After all, girls are making Faustian bargains, sacrificing their true selves for damaged false relationships with others. Disconnecting internally, they fall apart interpersonally, suppressing conflict and anger, adopting facades of the nice and polite, and striving toward interactions that deny the realities of human relationships. And it talks about how denying their authentic selves, they're also denying that they have anger and just, having a healthy relationship. Like they're putting themselves in these horrible situations by denying who they are and their feelings.
The first concept that we talked about to tie back to the class material was toxic femininity. And we defined that as the subtle ways that femininity is toxic and how girls are pushed to be perfect and inauthentic through expected actions. The first way we did this was to tie it back to tough guys. Culture teaches young men to be aggressive and cool and angry. And it says if you're a real man, you need to stand up for yourself and never act feminine. And we saw that through Tough Guys when we watched that film. If you don't live up to this idea, men are often seen as a wussy or sometimes gay, as we learned. But Simmons explained this concept as well because she stated that it gives the same message about girls in her research. Girls are taught to act a certain way in society because it's what a girl should do, and girls aren't supposed to show that aggression. So these actions are portrayed through these beliefs that these girls are just supposed to act a certain way, and then when they don't act a certain way, they're looked at as aggressive. Simmons states this in her research during this time period, particularly because girls are more insecure and fragile during teen years, which can influence these inauthentic actions, and that causes a difference in how they act as well.
The next concept of the book we found is gendered emotions. Emotions are divided into two separate categories for men and women. Masculinity and femininity are defined as emotionally opposed in Western culture. Women tend not to be aggressive as men in expressing anger because aggression and anger are hallmarks of masculinity. However, aggression is a human emotion that everyone might have. If women cannot be outwardly aggressive, women have to express their aggression in an indirect way. Simmons said, when aggression cannot, for one reason or another, be directed physically or verbally at its target, the aggressor has to find other channels. Gendered emotion against overt aggression led girls to engage in other non-physical forms of aggression.
Today we discussed the book's main message was that girls still express anger and frustration just differently than boys because of their fear of isolation. We covered the overall book content and the two main topics of toxic masculinity and gendered emotions as they relate to the material from the book. Thank you for watching.